Welcome to yet another episode of Why I Like These Books. Today I'll be reviewing All Quiet on the Western Front. All Quiet on the Western Front is thought of by many as one of the greatest, if not the greatest, war novel ever written. And they're probably right, but it's ironic that they use the word great in the same sentence as war, because Erich Remarque, the author of the novel, describes war as anything but great. Set during World War I, All Quiet on the Western Front explores how the violence and terror of global war helped to create the Lost Generation. Gertrude Stein is famous for creating that phrase, the Lost Generation. It refers to a group of American expatriate writers in the 1920s. More broadly, it's used as shorthand for describing the people who grew up during and in the aftermath of the First World War, a generation so marred with violence that it struggled to return to a peaceable state of relative innocence. Home as a felt presence, less a physical space, was forever lost. Hence, the Lost Generation was forced to wander joylessly from place to place. They were the shell-shocked itinerants. Paul Baumer, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, it's German, is the novel's narrator, but the story is more a story of his company. All of them are members of the German army. It is a story of attrition because many members of Paul's company, and I hope I'm not spoiling the plot of the book when I say this, die. Perhaps the most grisly and disturbing scenes in the book involve the death of animals, however. There is a powerful scene involving the tortured death of horses with their intestines spilling from their bodies. Some of these horses drag themselves on the ground with their front legs, their spines broken, and gurgle and whinny until they naturally expire or are mercifully shot by other soldiers. What does it say about us that we are more accepting of violence to our own kind than to other species? Does that make us more or less depraved? I don't know, but Remarque explores that question in the novel. Remarque's style of writing is imagistic. The Imagists were a group of poets operating around the early 20th century who upheld the power of the simple image to express a host of metaphorical and emotional meaning. T.S. Eliot refers to it as the objective correlative, meaning that we cannot discuss any abstract quality, a feeling, a thought, etc., without first finding a concrete corollary. The object is a necessary vehicle for our philosophical or poetic imagination. The objects that carry the most metaphorical heft in this novel are often macabre and disturbing. This is intentional, I think. Remarque is remarking on the sheer stupidity of war, a theme echoed in A Farewell to Arms by Ernest Hemingway, also recommended and also set during World War I. There is nothing romantic about Remarque's portrayal of war. It is viscerally repulsive. That word is important because viscera, guts, entrails, gore feature prominently in the book. We've already mentioned the horrific scene with the horses, but there are equally disturbing scenes involving all kinds of human dismemberment and mutilation. Men running for cover on stumps of feetless legs, men coughing up parts of their lungs after inhaling mustard gas. I could go on, but I'd rather not. The gestalt of this litany of blood is horror at the idea of war. The men discuss the insanity of war several times throughout the book. Some think war should be settled instead of armies by setting the leaders of fractious countries against one another in single combat. Other soldiers liken war to a virus, a disease that no one wants, but all are incapable of preventing. It's like war has its own inevitable momentum that sends the innocent and the young careening toward a tragic death. What inspired these men to fight? This is also explored in the book. The men in Paul's company remember the sermon-like exhortations of a former teacher as being instrumental in their signing up to serve. This teacher and several of their acquaintances almost shame them into fighting for Germany, and so they fight. But the romantic notion of martial glory is quickly shown to be a flimsy lie. The men get some modicum of revenge on their former teacher when they cruelly order him around as a lower-ranking soldier in the army, but the revenge satisfies only their hunger for justice. It does not restore their innocence or their capacity to lead normal lives. Those have been irrevocably taken. PTSD is also explored in this book. When Paul returns to his home village during a several weeks' leave, he finds that he is no longer able to derive any joy from the things he once took great solace in. His library of classic books, for instance, seems a dead thing. The sights and sounds that once elicited joy inspire no response at all, unless we count fear, because he is often startled by loud sounds and cannot shake the feeling that a mortar will all of a sudden come smashing down on top of him. He is aware of how the war has handicapped him, but is unable to heal his injuries because they are psychic and existential. So why do I like this book? I've spent the last however many minutes reviewing how gruesome and stomach-turning it is. I like the book because it's beautiful. Simply stated, the writing, even though it focuses on something as soul-shattering as war, is gorgeous. Even a thing as ugly as war can be written beautifully, and Remarque does just that in this book. I hope you'll give it a read. Just make sure to follow it up with a happier palate cleanser.